I want to share a story with you. It's on the front page of The Blaze, and it is a story about a decorated vet that was arrested for, quote, rudely displaying his rifle. He says the officer pulled him over and said, give me the gun. He said, for what? What am I doing wrong? The officer, according to him, tried to grab the gun. It is on video, not that part of it, so we don't know. The officer this is up for, the court to decide, and we haven't heard the officer's side of the story. But the rest of the video, the part where the cameras actually started to roll, I'm sorry, I find it very difficult. For what you know on video, I don't know. The guy he started to get rude, but I'd be pissed as hell, too. I live in Texas for a reason. This is the way I expect New York cops to be, not Texas cops. Do you understand his anger, but are you confused by the cops' reactions?
Yeah, I definitely, it seemed like he went too far at one point.
The cop says, we're the law. He's like, this is not the law. You're breaking the law here. And the cop says, we're the law, which... Hello.
He also tells them the residents don't care about the law. Well, that doesn't matter. If they don't care about it or not, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, you are there to uphold the law.
Yeah.
Not to make law, create law, or react to what the people say you should do. That's mob mentality. C.J. Grisham is the guy who is in the video. First of all, thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you, Glenn.
Tell me, the picture is of you and George W. Bush in the Oval Office. What were you there for?
Well, I'm a military blogger. I've been blogging since 2005 about the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he grabbed about 10 of us. Apparently, my blog was being briefed to him, and because we were talking about what was actually happening in Iraq to try and counter what the media was trying to spin. And so he, pulled us in there and just wanted to say thank you for telling your story.
Okay,
and,
so now, all right. Yeah. So you were on the street. Where were you in Texas?
We're outside of Temple, Texas, out in the country. I live on a farm, my family farm. It's a 4-generational farm. And, literally out in the country, in the middle of nowhere, amongst pastures and fields.
That's what I thought. It really looks.
It looks very rural.
Non-urban, that's for sure.
And,
not at all.
Okay, so you're there in Temple, Texas, and you're with your son. And what were you doing?
We were just on a hike. My son's one merit badge away from his Eagle Scout. He chose hiking, and that's the other required badge that he needs. And so we were out on a 10-mile hike towards that effort on a Saturday morning. Very light traffic on the back roads anytime, but especially on a Saturday morning. And that's all we were doing. We were just walking down the road on a rural hike for 10-mile loop, and I always carry a rifle with me or a shotgun everywhere I go out there because of rattlesnakes, cougars, and feral hogs. So it's never been a problem before.
Okay. The police officer then approaches you from behind or from the front?
Correct.
No, that was a choice.
From behind. I heard behind me, I heard someone say, hold up a second. And I turn around, and there's a police car, and the officer is getting out of the car. The lights aren't on. It's a very casual. He doesn't have his gun drawn. He just walks up to us as if, like I would expect any police officer to, which is just to find out, hey, everything okay?
Especially in rural Texas.
Yeah, especially out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay. These guys are part of what department?
Temple Police Department.
So it's not exactly a bustling metropolis.
No.
Right.
And really, it's only technically the city of Temple because they keep expanding their borders out into the country. That used to not be Temple, but they've been expanding quite wildly for the last few years.
Perfect. Okay, so now they approach you, and we have not talked to the officers. We plan on. I believe the Blaze has reached out to the police, but tell us your side of the story. What happened?
Yeah, so he just walked up to us. He says, hey, what are you guys out here doing? And I said, we're out here hiking with my son. They're in his merit badge. And then he looks, and then like almost his demeanor changed. He looks at my rifle, and he's like, what are you doing with the rifle? And I said, well, does it matter, officer? Am I breaking the law? And at that point, he took another step closer, and he grabbed my weapon. He never asked me for it. He just grabbed it. And that's just something you don't do to anybody, much less a combat veteran. I'm not saying he knew that, although I was wearing my Afghanistan boonie cap with my rank on it, so he should have had some clue that I was a soldier or a veteran. But he grabbed my weapon, and my immediate reaction was to take a step back. It was attached to me, so I kind of grabbed it back as a reaction and said, "What the hell do you think you're doing? You're not going to disarm me." And at that point, he drew his pistol on me, ordered me to take my hands off the gun and move over to the car. I still wasn't pointing it at anybody. I just grabbed it back. And that's when I remembered that I had the video camera and turned it on.
So was a video camera in your hand? How did you get to it? Obviously, if he's worried about you shooting a gun, you going into your pockets would be something he wouldn't be comfortable with. How did you get it out?
No, I had it strapped on my Camelback. I was wearing a Camelback for water, and it was just strapped on the front because part of the merit badge requirement is that you document all your hikes.
Okay.
And so that's what we were doing. And so I took the video camera. When he threw me onto the car, the camera sort of flung forward, and that's when I remembered that I had it. And so I turned it on.
All right. So now the rest of it you can see at the Blaze, and it's pretty stunning stuff. And I'm so gravely. I mean, again, I haven't spoken to the police officers, and maybe you're just making up maybe you were pointing the gun at him at the beginning. I haven't spoken to them myself, but I am shocked and horrified at the way especially Texas police officers would behave, especially out in the rural communities, and have such a blatant disregard for the law. It seems, when they said to you, "We are the law," that would
yeah. And each time I asked the question, I was getting more and more frustrated. And there are a few moments where
You lost your...
I'm a devout Christian. I'm LDS, and I said some things I regret. But I was getting more and more frustrated as they kept me there longer. Plus, I've got a back injury from Iraq, and the officer kept applying pressure to my neck, and he wouldn't let me sit up straight. He wouldn't let me bend all the way over. I mean, he just kept kind of putting pressure on me and trying to keep me off balance. And it was just, it was a very frustrating situation because here we are doing absolutely nothing wrong, just walking down a road. We haven't even passed a house yet, other than my aunt's house. And suddenly I'm, in cuffs for absolutely no reason. And they're not answering my questions about what it is that I'm accused of. They're going through my wallet and my things without accusing me of a crime. And, the whole
without a
situation
warrant
just got me more and more angry.
Okay. And here's the part that really was disturbing. They took you to jail, right?
Yes.
All right. And they said, "We're going to take your son home."
Correct.
And you said to your son...
Right after the video camera goes off, and I tell my son he can turn off the camera, I told him, I said, "Chris, do not answer any questions. You do not have to respond to anything these guys tell you."
How old is your son?
He's 15.
Must have scared the crap out of your son.
Yeah.
Yes, he's quite traumatized by it, and
especially when you have a
we're dealing through those issues.
Especially when you have a police officer saying that your dad is a bad example of a dad.
Right.
I thought that was outrageous, but anyway.
Yeah, so I told my son, I said, "Do not answer any questions until you get home to Mom. Make sure that Mom is there if you're going to answer any questions first. She will answer everything for you." So the sergeant that's in the video is the one that takes my son home. And on the way there, he tells my son, he says, "I know your dad said not to answer any questions, but you need to answer. You need to answer some questions."
Holy cow!
And my son initially resisted, and when they got to the house, he says, "Look, you're not getting out of this car until you answer these questions." And I mean, they were just identifying questions, name, age, things
Doesn't
like
matter.
that.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
You're being held illegally against your will. You have the right to remain silent, and you also, if you are not under arrest, you also have the right to calmly walk away. Those are two rights you absolutely have, and they violated both of those rights.
When he said, "You have to answer my questions, or you're not getting out of this car," and that's when he started answering the questions. And My son didn't tell my wife that until after the cop had left. I mean, that's how scared he was.
So what's the end of the story? The charges still standing against you? What happened at the end?
Well, right now they've reduced the charges from resisting arrest to interference with public duties. And my pretrial hearing is May 29th. We are requesting an earlier hearing because we still don't have the dash cam video and we still don't have the 911 call. The police aren't playing quite fairly.
Well, you know what? I tell you, CJ, at least for your son, again, I'm not going to pick sides, but if the story that you are telling is true, these police officers, both of them need to be fired. And an example.
I agree. And let me also caveat that Glenn was saying that most of these guys are great guys. They're what you would expect a Texas police officer to be.
Right.
I've never had any issues with Temple police officers in the past. My family and I always go up to them and shake their hands and thank them for their service.
Well, I know you Mormons. You're usually pretty.
I just don't know what happened this day.
You're usually troublemakers. Okay, so I would suggest that you get a giant-sized civil rights attorney because people need to start filing lawsuits, civil right lawsuits, because your child, his civil rights were violated. I believe your civil rights were violated as well. And if you're going to play this game, you better play it the only way it makes a difference is when people have millions of dollars at stake. And believe me, once an attorney makes millions of dollars on a lawsuit, it will change the behavior of people. And you will have attorneys all across the country standing up waiting to take these. This is not. I know.
This makes me nervous, though. You're sitting here talking about lots of lawyers going after police officers. Jeez, is that the next?
Let me tell you something. Ugh. Let me tell you something. Here's the way. Here's the way. And CJ, tell me this wouldn't be acceptable to you. And if it's not, well, that's your business. But what is acceptable to me is if that happened just with his son. Forget about the rest. If that happened with his son, that police officer needs to be fired. Not suspended, not put on probation, fired. There is zero tolerance for that kind of stuff. Look, that kind of stuff is that's the baby step to what everybody always claims about police. They always claim about, well, they were beaten, they were doing that. Well, that's the end, that's the gateway to it. You do not violate the law, period. You enforce the law. You want to have respect, you enforce the law, and you follow it to the letter. Because you're dealing with people, police officers, please hear me. You're dealing with people who are your friends, who are the ones who always come to your stations. And they're the ones who give you gifts at Christmas. They're the ones who come across the parking lot to say thank you for doing your duty. We're the ones that are the good guys. And if you start violating things and you lose us, you got a dark future ahead of you, because who do you have? Who's your master? We are really getting to a place, and CJ, I said earlier, I would hope to behave better than you did, but I understand the way you behaved, because I would be so outraged and so...
You would. You'd be indignant. You'd be frustrated, like you said.
That's not the way we should behave.
Yeah.
And I would hope but I don't know if I would, but I would hope I would behave better than that. But tell me, CJ, if the police department said, we're not only dropping the charges, we are going to fire these guys for doing it, because that's not the way we behave. Would you be okay with that?
I would be okay with that, but I would add also that I think that the police department needs training on how to deal with armed citizens.
Yeah.
I would be for that as well. There's no money that needs to be exchanged, and it's not about money. But I'm telling you, the only thing that makes people wake up and smell the coffee, unfortunately, at this late of hour, millions of dollars. And the people who have guns must have somebody on their side to stand up and defend them. And if they're wrong, they're wrong. But if they're right, I mean, guys, we are entering a new civil rights movement. We are. CJ, thank you so much. We'll
hey, thank you.
We'll talk to you again. Thank you
Put
very
him
much.
on hold if you can.
Yeah, put him on hold.